Hi, welcome back to Baking with Love. I'm Carolyn Stella, aka Stella, coming to you from the PEG TV kitchen studio. And today I'd like to share with you a recipe for a chocolate cake with bittersweet chocolate frosting. January is my birthday month, and this cake makes a delicious birthday cake. I actually made this cake for many birthdays, including my Aunt Lucy's 102nd birthday and one of my friends with a Valentine's birthday. I made it in the shape of a heart. So if you don't have a January birthday to celebrate, I did find out that January 27th is National Chocolate Cake Day. So maybe you can make it to celebrate that. And it also said that January 27th is Fun at Work Day. So maybe you can make this cake and bring it to your office and celebrate both at the same time. The chocolate lovers in your office will love you for it. So, speaking of chocolate, what would this show be without our fun facts? Can you guess which country consumes the most chocolate per person per year? Switzerland is #1 with 19.8 pounds per person per year. That's about 6 ounces a week. Germany came in second, Ireland third, the UK fourth, and France rounded out the top 5. The US, our good old United States, came in 8th with 14 pounds of chocolate per person per year. That ends up to be about 4 ounces a week. And this time we beat Canada, our neighbors to the north, by 2 pounds per person per year. Now, I might be a little low on that average, but this cake is going to really bump up my numbers, and yours too if you try it. So we're going to start with the frosting today. Usually I would start with the cake, but the frosting's going to have to set up a little bit and cool. So I did a little prep before the show, started with this double boiler, which was essentially this pot over another pot of simmering water, with 4 ounces of bittersweet chocolate. I used morsels, 8 ounces of unsweetened chocolate. I used baking bars, and 2 sticks of butter. And that was simmered over that pot, and now it's this really great chocolatey goo. And in here we have 3½ cups of confectionery sugar that I sifted with a pinch of salt. So also done before the show for the sake of time. And in here I have 7/8 of a cup of whole milk. 7/8 of a cup is 1 cup minus 2 tablespoons. Did you know that there's 16 tablespoons in a cup? So to this we're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and we're going to, give that a little swirl. And then we're going to whisk this into our powdered sugar and salt. And we're just going to give that a nice whisk until it's incorporated. And then we're going to add that chocolate butter concoction. So we're going to get this all around the edges. And also, you can also add in the love to the frosting. So we'll sprinkle in a little love and give this another twist. And now we're going to add now this has cooled a little bit, and it's going to need to cool a little bit more while we bake the cake. So we're going to mix that in now. And it's still pretty warm, so you can see it nice and gooey. And this is going to make a really great chocolate frosting. I was thinking about adjectives for this cake, and delicious just isn't really good enough. So I was thinking about the word decadent. And so I was like, I love language. So I thought, let me just look up the definition of decadent. And the first definition was like moral decay. I was like, that's not this cake. But then I looked up synonyms for decadent, and they included, well, among other things like corrupt, they included sinful and self-indulgent. So maybe this cake is decadent. But we're going to give this a nice spin. And you can see it's a little too runny to be a frosting at this point. So as it cools, it should thicken up. And then we're going to be able to use it to assemble our cake. So I wish you could smell this. It's so good and chocolatey. All right, we'll set this aside, and we'll get back to this after the cake. I'm going to give my hands a wipe. And now we'll come over to our stand mixer. So into the bowl of our stand mixer, I'm full of chocolate already. We're going to add 5 ounces of room temperature butter, unsalted butter at room temperature. That is 1 stick plus 2 tablespoons. And we're going to cream that together with 2 3/4 cups of firmly packed brown sugar. I'm using dark brown sugar. And you might remember our story about firmly packing your sugar. So we're going to get this out of there, like so. And now we're going to turn on our stand mixer and let this do its thing. We want to have this nice and creamy. So while that's doing its thing, I'll talk to you about some of our other ingredients that I prepped before the show. In this bowl, we have 1 1/2 cups of cake flour and 1 1/2 cups plus 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 1/4 teaspoons baking soda. So those things have all been sifted together and they're ready to go. In this bowl, more chocolatey, gooey goodness, we have 1 1/2 cups of dark cocoa powder. I was able to find dark cocoa. You can use any cocoa powder you'd like. And 1 tablespoon and 1 1/4 cups boiling water. That's what made this really rich cocoa paste. And this also had to cool a little bit. So I did that before we started, and that's going to be ready to go. So now we'll look into our bowl of our mixer, and we have our brown sugar and butter. And I'm just going to scrape down the sides and give the bottom a little turn. And we're going to add our eggs one at a time. So these are 3 large eggs. I'm going to add them one at a time, so I just crack them individually. And they're at room temperature. So we've got egg number 1. Give that a spin. Egg number 2. Looks good. And egg number 3. And in this ramekin, I have 1 1/4 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So we can add that in to our batter as well. And now's a good time to put in your heaping cup of love before the other ingredients. So we'll sprinkle in the love, a little extra since it's my birthday cake. And we'll put the love over to the side. And that looks good. Now we are going to add our dry ingredients, but we're going to alternate with 1 1/4 cup of buttermilk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk, don't worry, I've got a great trick. You can make your own buttermilk with 1 cup of whole milk and 1 tablespoon of either fresh squeezed lemon juice or white distilled vinegar, or even a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. And the reason we use buttermilk is because it has a little higher pH. It's acidic. And the acid in the buttermilk reacts to the baking soda and baking powder, and it acts as a leavener, which makes our cake light, and it gives it a nice tender crumb. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our cake flour, baking soda, baking powder, and we're going to add this in a little at a time. And we're going to alternate with our buttermilk. So I have 1 1/4 cups buttermilk. And I used real buttermilk because I had it, but now you know, if you don't have it, it's not a problem if you have some milk and some lemon juice, or some milk and some vinegar. And that's also a good trick if you ever want to wake up one day and decide it would be a great day, maybe a snow day, and you want to make some buttermilk pancakes and you don't have buttermilk on hand. So a little more flour, a little more buttermilk, and we're just going to keep alternating the two as our mixer does all the work. And it's going to make our batter. That was a big bunch of buttermilk, so I'll add the rest of our flour. I could have the spout on here, but I don't. All right, that looks good. And the last bit of buttermilk. And we could increase our speed a little bit. And then I'm going to I'm going to open this up and give you can see it coming together nicely. Give the sides a scrape, give the bottom a flip, because our next ingredient is the cocoa paste. So let's get all this mixed up first. I can see some of the brown sugar mixture needs a little bit of help down there. You know that if you use a stand mixer, there's that little well at the bottom, and that sometimes needs a little turning over. All right, that looks nice. Let me give it one more spin, and then we will add our cocoa paste. Nice. All right, here comes our cocoa paste. Now it did cool off. It might be a little thicker. Ooh, a lot thicker. It's like fudge. And it's dark cocoa, remember. So we're going to add this in. Oh, so good. Again, this is a chocolate lover's dream, this cake. And I hope that that's you. You can find the recipe on the PEG TV website for both the frosting and the cake. And don't forget, I'll add a little more buttermilk in here. Don't forget, January 27th is National Chocolate Cake Day. So here we go. We're going to put this down and blend our cocoa paste into our batter. And you don't want any streaks. You want it solid chocolate through and through. So again, we'll have to scrape down the sides. Oh, it looks so good. I wish you could smell this. It definitely smells decadent, sinful. Give it another scrape. I see just a little beige. You don't want any more beige, so even off of my scraper. We want it all chocolate all the time. Yeah, there's some streaks. So we have to give this another mix, but it's smooth, which is something that we want in a chocolate cake. And like I said, that buttermilk is going to make it nice and tender and light. So we're going to give it another spin. And while I give it another spin, I can give you a little more chocolate trivia. According to the Guinness Book of Records, the largest single piece of chocolate was in 2007 in Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Hershey's Kiss. They made a 12-foot tall, 30,000-pound, that's 15 tons, Hershey's Kiss. It took over 16,000 feet of silver foil to wrap it, and the little plume that usually says Hershey's Kisses off the top was 7 feet long, and it said 100 years of Hershey's Kisses. So that's the world's largest piece of chocolate, right in our good old US of A. All right, this looks good. I think we're ready for our pans. So before the show, again, I did a little prep. I have 3 9-inch cake pans, and I cut a round of parchment. Get my hands another wipe. And I sprayed each pan with a little non-stick cooking spray. So we're going to divide our batter evenly between these 3 pans. And some of you might want to use a kitchen scale for this. And you're welcome to if you want to be exact. I am just going to do my best to even them out. And again, we preheated our oven to 350 also before the show. So we prepared our pans, we made the cocoa paste, and we did the double boiler, and I did my sifting all before you got here. But that's just so we could keep it timely. All right, so we've got our batter. Anybody want to lick this? We'll leave it right over here. And we've got our prepared pans. I'm just making sure that last little bit in the bottom has gotten all the chocolatey goodness that it needs. No streaks of beige. Okay, so into our pans, this nice chocolatey batter will go. Can you see how fudgy that is? Move over to pan number 2. I know that one needs more. But again, we're just going to keep going until we feel like they're even. Number 3. And then I'm going to just give them a little jiggle, and I'll also feel them. Last time I did use a scale to check, and they all were really close, so I didn't bring my scale here today. But again, if you'd like to be precise, it is a good way to make sure that you have about the same amount of batter in each pan. I'm getting this on me, but I don't mind because I'll just lick it off. And again, you want to scrape down your bowl. You want to scrape down your scraper. You want to get every bit in the pan that you can. Why leave any behind? Unless you do have bowl lickers in your family, or spatula scraper lickers in your family. All right, so another little chocolate cake trivia. I think the Betty Crocker chocolate cake mix, they had other flavors, but I think chocolate was introduced in 1955. What else? There's lots of fun chocolate facts out there. So that's cake layer 1. Maybe this one's okay. Cake layer 2, which actually was number 1. Cake layer 3. And again, these are 9-inch pans. If you use 8-inch pans, then you are, of course, going to have to check the timing, and you might have to make them bake a little bit longer because they'll be a little bit thicker layers. Again, I'm going to give myself a wipe. Chocolate everywhere. And we're going to put these in a 350-degree oven for about 25 minutes. Now, at home, my oven can fit all 3 pans on the center rack, but the studio kitchen has a little bit smaller wall oven. So what we're going to do is we're going to put 2 on this rack and 1 below, and halfway through I will rotate them, and that should help them bake evenly. If you have an oven big enough, I would put all 3 on the center rack and also rotate them about halfway through. Okay, so let's just give this a little wipe and check our frosting and see how things are firming up over here. I have my spreader. Yes, so look at that. That is what we want in a frosting. Okay, so again, we're going to clean up a little bit. And then we're going to go into our PEG TV time machine. And I'm going to have you use your imaginations. And 25 minutes have magically gone by. And here we have our finished layers. Now, these will have to cool. So we'll remove them from the oven and put them on our cooling rack for, I'd say, about 15 minutes. So again, you're going to use your imagination, and we're going to go in our PEG TV time machine. Now these have cooled 15 minutes. I'm going to go around each one with a butter knife and just make sure that they're not stuck. And then I'm going to remove them from the pan onto the cooling rack, and they will still have to cool a little bit, but with the parchment, they should come out so nice and easy. So again, we just let this frosting cool. If you don't let your cake layers cool, that even though the frosting is cool, it will start to melt. So we want to make sure that everything's cool before frosting. But for the sake of time and for the show, we have to use our time machine and speed things up a little bit. All right, so now our cake layers are cool, our frosting has thickened, and now we'll talk about assembling this cake. So you're going to need some kind of platter. Now I don't have a Lazy Susan, but if you had a Lazy Susan, that would be a nice way to turn the cake as you go. You're going to take your first layer. Now you might, doing a little more cleanup, you might want to put a little dab of frosting on your platter, just as a little bit of a glue, but this cake's going to be so heavy you don't have to worry about it sliding. Oh, also, while you're baking, you might want to test. So I have my little toothpicks here. So you're going to take your first layer and center it on your platter. And you're going to take a good amount, because this makes just the perfect amount for this cake. Take a good amount of your frosting. Oh, also, I should say that if you want to plane your layers, if your layers dome a little bit, like this one did, you want to take a knife and just shave off the top to make it even. You're welcome to do that. And also, if you're really neat, you can put a little bit of parchment around your cake platter while you're frosting it. And then at the end, you can pull that out so that you have a nice clean edge. I'm just going to try to be careful, and I did not take off the dome. But again, if that's how you like to do it, feel free, and just mostly don't forget the love. So while you're icing, you can just think some loving thoughts. So that looks good, like a good amount. You're going to pull it to the edges, and then you're going to put your second layer. Remember, this is a triple layer chocolate cake. So you put your second layer on top of that frosting. Add another, you got to center it. Looks like it's a little to my side. Another big glop of this gooey, bittersweet chocolate goodness. And sometimes you do a very thin layer called a crumb coat. And that is so that you don't pull any crumbs along with your frosting. I think we're okay with this cake without a crumb coat. But if you had a lighter colored frosting or a color other than your cake, you might want to do that so the crumbs don't show through. But with a chocolate cake with chocolate frosting, you should be fine. And this one's really not crummy. This one's really good. All right, so now we have layer number 3. And again, you want to try to center it. And because I didn't plane the cake, I have these little thicker areas that we're going to just fill in with frosting. So some people might get pieces that have a little more, but if they love chocolate, they will not complain about that whatsoever. And once we get it over the top, we're going to start pulling it up or down the sides. And if you want to get fancy, of course, you can make little points, or if it's a birthday cake like this one is, you can get a different color frosting to decorate the edges or write happy birthday to the person or their year. I'm going to keep it simple and chocolatey today, and we're going to just use some candles. But okay, now I'm going to just go around the sides. Now again, it's going to, if you have a Lazy Susan, you can rotate this on the platter and get around the edges. And again, I'm just doing it quick for the sake of the show, but you just want to make sure you give everything a nice coating, and then you can pretty it up. But and before you cut this cake, you're really going to have to let it set, because you don't want it to slide around. And again, I might not get it all frosted for you, but not to worry. We have our Peg TV time machine, and I know you have great imaginations. So you would just keep going around, again, pulling it up, filling in those cracks. You could see what I'm doing. And there's plenty of frosting here, so even if you have to snitch some from the top, it'll fill in all of these gaps. And I have more in the bowl, but again, for the sake of time, we're going to fast forward into the future, and we're going to do a quick switch. Again, using your imaginations, here we have the finished cake. So again, this had to set up a little bit before cutting it, and we wouldn't be able to cut the one that I just did. So let's see what we've got. I'm going to make a nice big slice, and then we're going to use our cake server. First slice is always the hardest, but we're going to try to get in there and Now we're going to try it. Oh, I didn't talk about decorating it. Well, I did talk a little bit about decorating it, about writing the name, but I had some really cute heart. Here they are. This is how I would decorate it because we're on Baking with Love, and it's my birthday. So I'm going to put these heart candles in, and then after the show, I'll light it and make a wish. Let me get a fork. You can see our layers, you can see our frosting, and you can see our happy birthday plates. Get a nice piece of frosting in there. Happy birthday to me. I hope you'll try this recipe, whether it's for a birthday, National Chocolate Cake Day, have fun at work day, or just because you love chocolate. So you can find the recipe on the PEG TV website. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time on Baking with Love.